Okay, hi everybody. Today I want to give you a discussion of the mathematics of the monad, or in other words, the mathematics of your soul. This was inspired by a conversation I had with X's AI Grok, which I posted on my blog site, but perhaps not all the YouTube subscribers read that. So I'll post it in the description. And yeah, the discussion with Grok was pretty good. Grok was good at extrapolating everything that I meant, although I did give it very leading questions. I mean, it didn't solve the answer to existence or the structure of a monad by itself. I basically suggested and told it where to go and what to do, but it was very consistent, and it didn't take much wrangling at all to get it to produce the answers which you would expect from Illuminism, from ontological mathematics. So it was actually quite impressive, and it gave us some nicely formatted equations at the end, which I'll show to you now. So let's get into that. Remember, the basic structure of your monad of your soul is this circumpunct, this disk structure, right? Where you have inner sort of high frequency circle, and then you have the lower frequency circles at the outer side. So this is the simplest sort of description, the level 0 description or depiction rather of your soul. And if we want to show an animation of that, then it would look like this video, which I had in a previous video a long time ago. So the idea here is that all of these points are moving at a constant speed through numbers. They all have the exact same linear velocity in number space. And that is what leads to them providing different frequencies, because since they're going around each circle at the same speed, well, the point is going to get around the smaller circle much faster compared to the outer circles, which are much larger, and that's how you get different frequencies. And so if you simply make the gradation very small and color code each of those frequencies, high frequency being, on the high frequency end of the color spectrum, low frequency being, the low frequency end, the large radii being red, then you would get, if you have very fine gradations, you would get a symbol that looks like this. And this is the basic picture of your monad. This is how your monad looks. This is an instance, for example, of the electromagnetic spectrum. But beyond that, I mean, if we code what's beyond the electromagnetic spectrum conceptually and just use the electromagnetic visual spectrum for humans to color code that, then this doesn't necessarily mean that it's limited to red, from red to purple, or red to violet or whatever. It means that it's comprising everything to the lowest possible frequency in existence, all the way to the highest possible frequency that is capable to exist, right? So that would be the complete grand monad, and it's also your monad, because of course your monad, your soul, is an instant. You are an instance of the electromagnetic spectrum, and so this is what you look like. But the question is, how do we show a variation? This is kind of one-dimensional, because we would expect some sort of structure to be hidden inside this, which provides uniqueness. So how would you demonstrate that? Let's look at the monad equation, which Grok wrote down nicely for me. So the monad is the union, okay, and it's not an integral, because an integral means you're adding things together on top of each other, and the different circles don't add on top of each other together. Your monad, your soul, you're an instance of all possible frequencies basically, right? So that means you're a union of all possible frequencies. So that's why I use the union symbol. And then I just start from n equals 1 being, the lowest frequency, or actually this is a function of radius now, to infinity minus 1. Why do the infinity minus 1 obviously is not a sensible mathematical equation. I use that though on purpose to indicate that it is an ontological limit to infinity that we might expect exists, just as there's a lower limit of 1, the lowest possible radius. So here, this Rn, I'll explain this equation a little bit more. So this R is the radius of each circle, and n is the nth radius. So it's the nth R. R is a function of n, and then you have the exponential. And then this term here, the V naught over the given radius, that is what produces your constant speed of the circle around each radius, around all radii actually, so that they all have the constant rate of speed through numbers. And then each circle has a phase where the point is on the circle as a function of which circle you're talking about, right? So there you go. So that would look like, so that equation is this. That's what this is, okay? So each circle is a given radius. So you have r of n equals 1, r of n equals 2, r of n equals 3, n equals 4 equals 5, and so on, right? Up to the biggest possible circle, which you expect probably some ontological limit to. So that would be very large, but not quite infinity, less than infinity. So infinity minus 1, just to indicate ontological limit to the largest possible radius size, okay? And the spacing between, that's not really indicated clearly in the equation. Maybe I can rewrite it to show it, but there's probably going to be a spacing between each radius, which is probably related to the Planck scale, to Planck's constant, or the Planck length. It's probably related to that, the spacing between each r. Now, one thing that's really interesting is this phase term at each radius. That introduces the possibility for uniqueness, right? Because each monad can have a different function of phi for each radius, right? And what's phi mean? Phi is just where this point is on its circle, okay? It's just the offset relative to the other ones. But of course, all these circles are different sizes. So the thing is, you would never be able to really tell. It's almost like a hidden variable, because you would never really be able to tell really what those phi's are or what they should be. But you could liken your soul's evolution to, instead of having phi be a function of r, perhaps it's about making phi become a constant for all r. And maybe that's how you could mathematically explain your soul's development and learning. And that's what is bringing all your circles into alignment means. So of course that would look like this plot here. So you can see how they all start off. So this shows that they're all lined up. Like if you look at the other one, this video here, you'd never be able to tell if these all have the same phi, right? You would never be able to tell if they all have phi as an independent function of r, or if they had all the exact same phi for all r. You would never be able to tell that just by looking at it, right? Because it's always moving. Here, I set it up to be, on purpose, they all have the same phi, so every single point starts at the exact same position to the right, on the circle. Now, of course, if you let this go, after a few seconds, they're also scrambled up. You would never be able to tell that they all actually had the same phi. See, here we are now. You would never be able to tell that they had the same phi. So in this, how it starts off here, and as it remains, phi was actually a constant for how it started off, because the phi, the offset of the point on the circle, they were all identical, and they're all actually 0, right? So in that case, phi was 0 for every single r. But after a few minutes of running, of your monad being alive, you would never be able to tell that they had the same phi anymore, right? So it's almost like there's an internal hidden parameter, a hidden variable of some sort, which possibly is what the becoming of your soul, of yourself, an evolution of your soul and your whole mental body is about bringing those into alignment all with each other. And that's just a process of life, because you can't tell where each one needs to go and what it needs to do, but it is a process of sort of almost, especially in the beginning, effectively random evolution. I'm not saying it's random ontologically, but effectively random as you're trying to figure out how to adjust these phases to get them all to be in line with each other. So that would be maybe one way to mathematically explain and describe the evolution of your soul. The point of the evolution of your soul is to bring all these phases for each different radius into alignment with each other, so that that function, or that phi term, that phase term, becomes a constant rather than a function of r. That'd be one way of looking at it. And then you could also apply that to society as well. Society is about getting everyone, and the evolution of the whole universe and the whole grand monadic collective is about getting everybody to align on the same phase, on the same constant phase, And then maybe once you did that, that would bring about the total alignment of all circles over all monads together. Individually, if you achieve that, then that's when you achieve gnosis, and you break free from the reincarnational cycle. And then what you do then is you help the rest of the universe achieve that same alignment of phi. And it could be still unique. It could be unique for everybody still. Everybody could, the point is about getting aligned phis for everybody over their own circles, right? It's not that necessarily that you all have to have the exact same constant phi, but at least each monad has to have its own constant phi, possibly. So let's expand this. Look at the expanded form, and you have this, right? So the exponential of the imaginary number, right, breaks up into cos theta plus I sine theta, but here's the terms, right? So of course that v naught, that's the constant. So yeah, that v naught, so that's the constant speed that that the points are traveling around the circle, and this is each radius, and that's what gives you the different frequencies, even though the point is moving at the same speed. So this v naught, that's your constant. That's possibly it's possibly not the speed of light itself, but it's going to be very, very highly related, very closely connected to the actual speed of light. If it's not the actual speed of light, it's going to be very, 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 very related with some simple proportionality, I'm sure, to what the speed of light is. So that's what that term is. It's either the speed of light or very closely related to the speed of light. So we see that phi term now in both of these terms, of course, the cosine term and the sine term. Now, Hockney suggests that these two terms can become unequal. Now, if we look at this equation, right, the unexpanded form, you just have the exponential and you just have the single term, right? It's just phi and it's inside the exponential, but you expand that exponential, and that exponential is actually two terms, cosine and sine. And Hockney suggests that this phi can become unequal between the two terms. So it's not clear how that could manifest and why that might be. When these terms are the same term, you have a circle, a point flowing around a circle. If these two terms become unequal somehow, that would form an ellipse. That is actually the equation for an ellipse going around a central point instead of a circle, or a point going around following an ellipse instead of a circle. So how could you get these terms to become what's called deorthogonalized, so that they're not the same terms anymore, so that the point then starts to trace an ellipse? It's not clear how that could happen unless the point were maybe like a flowing point, or the point itself had some breadth, which gave some room for these terms somehow to simply float around a little bit from each other. That would produce an ellipse. And maybe that's how Hockney suggested that's how matter is produced. It comes from basically, this is the basic equation for your photon, for your electromagnetic wave, your thought wave, or your basic energy light wave. And if these two terms become unequal, then you produce an ellipse, and somehow it produces matter, is the suggestion. So we'd have to look into that. But anyways, at least you can see it there, that's how, what you would need to do. These two phi terms would need to be phi for the cosine and phi for the sine instead of the same phi for each other. So that's some interesting ways to look at the monad equation and to get some insight into how our monad works and to how we work as a soul. It would be nice, I haven't figured it out yet, but it would be nice to be able to show that there is a possible variation of phi at each radius here around the center circle, around the center point. I'm not clear how to show that yet, aside from having dark banding. Might do it, and maybe intensity of darkness too would show the different phis, the different phases. So I'm not sure how much this can be developed in order to show structure inside it, because this is a pretty clean and uniform monad. So how could we convert this two-dimensional image to convey a third dimension of structure as a function of radius? I'm not sure we can use it to do that. It would be really nice if we could. Like I said, you could add dark banding, and I suppose there's lots of different colors of red, there's lots of different colors of blue and yellow, but then you need to have obviously really sensitive eyes to be able to see that. So anyway, maybe as a basic depiction, it's nice. Anyway, it works. So let's go back to the exponential form. So that's the basic equation for your whole monad. It's a union of all possible circle radii, or of points traveling around radii of different sizes at constant speeds, and that's the expanded form. And as Grok helped explain, you could use this equation to talk about differences, to talk about individuality. Grok suggested that this phase term explains individuality. So that's a nice idea. It explains individuality, that everyone has their own unique phases for each radius. But then, you can also put that in terms of the possibility of evolution. Maybe evolution is about making all these phases for each radius having the same phase so that they're all aligned. And again, you would never be able to see that. If you had some sort of soul camera looking at your circles, it would always just look like this, because you might have to, you'd have to wait an infinite number of years or something before all those points happen to just line up that you could actually see it. So it's an internal variable which is somehow perceived and felt by you as the monad. And so perhaps when you have disjointed phases all over the place, you have a chaotic and life of low consciousness, for example. But when you get your phases beginning to align like this through, billions of years of your soul's evolution, that's when you start to achieve consciousness and higher level states of consciousness and self-awareness. And then maybe at some point, break out of the reincarnational cycle, as they say, right? So again, right, these all started off in phase. All of these points have the exact same phase. Phase is a constant. It's not a function of radius. Phase is a single value for every single circle. But after it's been running for a few seconds, you sure couldn't tell that just by looking at it. You would never be able to tell by looking. So it's sort of an internal hidden variable in a sense then, right? Because you would simply never get to the point where you would see them all lined up, right? It's always just going to look like more like this, where it looks like they're just randomly scattered. But there is actually an internal equation inside it, which is this phase term. And that would be how you would explain monad uniqueness, unique personalities. And you could also use it to explain what becoming is, what your soul's development and evolution is. So just some neat ways to apply math to your life and existence and the uniqueness of individuals and of monads. Kind of fun. Okay, well, it was somewhat technical. I hope you enjoyed it. You can read through the discussion I had with Grok, who helped. I already had these ideas, obviously, but it was really quick at sort of extrapolating it all. Actually, it suggested the idea that the phases would indicate uniqueness. I'm not sure if that's the idea I already had. I would have got there pretty quickly anyway, but that was actually, I think I got to admit that was something that Grok made clear, was that phase would be used for uniqueness. But for some reason, I think I should have known that or did know that already. But anyway, you can read about how Grok arrived at that. It's really nice, so that's why I'm showing it to you now here. Okay, good guys. So I hope you're all doing well. And sorry for all the math, but that's what Pythagorean ontological mathematics and Illuminism is all about, and we can use it to understand our nature. Good, so I hope you take care. And again, of course, I have a script written out to introduce and embed, what's the correct term? To instill the concept, the basic concept of ontological mathematics into the world. I still have that experiment, which I wish to do to show the nature of light, which will also help towards ontological mathematics. But actually, the script is the first thing that I should do and develop, sort of a mini documentary of sorts. It just requires some animation. That's basically what it is. But you need to know what's worth animating and what people are going to understand in an animation, and that's practical and applicable to today's political discourse and scientific discourse. So I have a great solution for that in the script. It'll be such a wonderful little sort of mini documentary to watch, and it'll have some nice, great visuals, which will just sort of embed the basic concept of what we mean by ontological mathematics into the mass consciousness. And then from there, that will be a crux. That'll be enough. That'll be enough for this concept, these concepts of mathematics being the ontology of existence, to go forward and give us everything that it can, which should be quite a bit. And wonderful. And we can even use that monad equation to say, look, this is what we're doing, and we need to align ourselves so that we can all cooperate and live together nicely. and live with people who are similar to us. We should not have people who are very dissimilar from us living together, because it's going to create discord. I mean, obviously, these are basic concepts which have been known for thousands of years, right? Aristotle wrote about that, philia, for example. So anyway, now there's a mathematical basis and justification for it based on the nature of our soul and the nature of reality and existence itself and its structure. So wonderful, right? Wonderful. We can move so quickly ahead and to such wonderful things, and it'll be like I said, a combination of, in my last video, Star Wars, Star Trek. Star Trek had wonderful social systems. I think there'll be improvements because Star Trek had some elements which actually don't actually in the end make full sense and work out. But it did have some great concepts and elements about a wonderful social system that we could develop under the right circumstances. So absolutely. And then the spiritual aspect. Well, this is spiritual now, where we've united metaphysics with physics and shown that there's a total sensible, logical, rational basis to know ourselves as a soul, right? As a being of energy, and this math, this perspective on the fundamental nature of existence, should give us, once we start applying, once this idea of, math is ontological and you need to do the correct things with math in the right way, that should lead to a total revolution in how we conduct and do science, which will, just automatically, it should give us new forms of technology and new abilities, which, it should be a wonderful future. We should be able to create a totally wonderful, optimized, beautiful future. And of course the argument can be made that there's a need for strife, and maybe strife will take on a new form or become something else. Obviously, maybe I shouldn't use fictional references. Maybe that's a bit too silly of me all the time to use references to fiction, but the whole, maybe it's naive, but anyway, that's the idea from Star Trek TNG, that existence is about self-development, self-improvement, expansion of consciousness, awareness, spiritual abilities, things like that, right? That's, I don't know, I think that'd be a fun future to develop, wouldn't it? Better than vaporizing people with anti-personnel hellfires that vaporize people. Like, gosh. All right, well, that got dark quickly. So let's look to the wonderful future that we can create with ontological mathematics. Please give me support. Please bring that support. Do whatever you can. If you have spiritual abilities to manifest, whatever it is. I know that sounds a bit kooky sometimes, but hey, we got to try everything at this point, whatever we can do. So give me that support, and I'd really appreciate it, and I will make it worth your while. Take care, everybody. Have a good night and good day, and bye-bye.